The 3. Appliance for you to start in Intercept Orthodontics. To start successfully, begin with appliance that will bring you the predictability you need. So, stay tuned and watch this video, because we're going to have a theoretical part and also a practical part of these 3 appliances, which are simple but yield excellent results so you can start well. Intercept Orthodontics. Welcome to this YouTube channel where we always talk about videos related to orthodontics, both Intercept Orthodontics and Corrective Orthodontics, which is practical and scientific with very relevant information about appliance. To start this almost theoretical practical workshop of ours, I kindly ask you to leave a like on this video, leave a like on this YouTube video, share it with your dentist friends who love studying orthodontics, those who like to be involved and enjoy orthodontics. Send it to these friends and also subscribe to the channel to receive updates, because almost every week we have new videos here on our YouTube channel. All right, today I decided to talk to you about appliances that are interesting for you to start with in Intercept Orthodontics. This video will be very good because I will talk about both when to use these appliances. I will also discuss the main mistakes with these appliances. And I will talk about how the construction of these appliances should be so that they work very well. So, let's get started. Maybe you don't know this, but my academic history has always been alongside Intercept Orthodontics, because when I graduated from undergraduate studies, the first orthodontics training, the first course I went to take, was a residency in a hospital. And what was the subject? Intercept Orthodontics. So, I have always been very passionate about this part of orthodontics, and I know that if you want to start studying orthodontics, the most logical way to begin is through the study of growth and development, through the study of Intercept Orthodontics. That is the correct order to learn orthodontics. First, learn how to intercept children and then start with the adult part. If you have already started studying adults, it is very worthwhile to begin studying children. There is also another issue. Perhaps there are already child patients in your practice, children of those adult patients who already need treatment, need to address malocclusions, and you are not yet attending to them, you are referring these patients. So don't let these patients leave your office without a diagnosis, without a treatment plan, because you can start studying in this area. Start attending to these patients and not referring them. And also begin a new source of income in your practice that can exist without the need for other or new patients. Let's study our first appliance that I want to discuss with you. It's this appliance here, which would be a removable expansion appliance, an appliance to expansion inside the mouth. The dental alveolar expansion appliance are the appliance taught in undergraduate studies. Classic appliance, very simple. These are appliances used with one function, to readjust the upper arch. So I increase the arch transversely. I correct possible posterior crossbites, given that I have already diagnosed that this posterior crossbite is of dental alveolar origin. So I can use this type of plate because this removable expansion plate will cause the teeth to tilt outward towards the buccal side, correcting the posterior crossbite, or correcting an intraalveolar constriction, meaning a narrowing within the alveolar part of the maxilla. There are different ways to make this appliance. Here you have 2 different types of appliance. For example, I have something basic, which would be the configuration of this appliance, which would be the expansion screw. So, I have that for both sides. That's basic. Also, another fundamental thing is the vestibular arch with the activation omegas. So I have omega number 1, omega number 2, which I can control. I can close. I can open to control this position of the vestibular arch. And there I also have clasps. Here I have 2 types of retention clasps. So you can see these retention clasps on the deciduous canines, which are generally there because they are an interesting retention point for these canines, and on the molars. I already have two different retention clasps. I have an Adams clasp on this side, and I have a C clasp on this other side. This Adams clasp is interesting because I can apply force on these small clasps with my 139 Tupram pliers and manage to increase the retention of this clasp. But the disadvantage is that these clasps are between the teeth, which will cause the occlusion to be a bit high if it is not very well adjusted. Now I have this other type of clasp, which would be the C clasp. The C clasp is interesting for pieces that have little retention. So, sometimes you know that deciduous teeth can have low retention. I can use the C clasp because I will necessarily have to make some attachments or resin attachments. And there, when I make these attachments, I improve the retention without needing to make so many activations on the clasp itself. Knowing this, my dears, in an appliance that is a removable expander, I can have the same appliance with the expansion screw, both for the upper arch and the lower arch. In the lower arch, it is also called a Schwartz expander. This expander can also have different types of retention clasps. Here I have a C clasp, which also helps me use resin attachments and increase retention if necessary. And these removable expanders, both for the upper arch and the lower arch, I can apply a resin coating. So, on the occlusal part, I can request it to come with resin in this region, and this is interesting for patients who are either mesofacial or dolichofacial. This will cause a relative intrusion of these posterior teeth. Therefore, for brachyfacial patients, it's not as interesting to have this occlusal lift, this occlusal coating. But the occlusal coating is cool because a specific reason that will reduce the friction of chewing and can favor this expansion of the patient in a more simplified way. Also, my dears, another thing we can do is individualization. So in a single expansion plate, I can place springs. Like here we have a spring, which is a mushroom activation spring. Other accessories we can use would also include a divided lingual trap. Obviously, it must be cut in half because otherwise, it cannot deactivate the posterior part. But I can combine it with different springs. I can combine it with some accessories so that I can individualize the treatment and perform two movements in one. I'm doing the expansion, but I'm also correcting the open bite. I am doing the expansion, but I am also correcting a cross bite. So I can creatively plan the design of my appliance. Perfect. This was our appliance number 1. What would be our appliance number 2? We are now going to talk about something simple so you can start successfully, so you can begin on this path of intercept orthodontics. Obviously, everything I'm talking about will require you to study more than just this YouTube video, but they are interesting appliance to start with. Here I have two different types of appliance that serve the same function. So I have space maintainers, which are our appliance number 2. These space maintainers will be useful for different reasons. So, when will you use a space maintainer? Here I have two different types. I have a loop band, and I have an ants lingual arch. I am going to talk about the loop band first. The loop band is an individualized space maintainer. We are going to use the loop band when I have the early loss of a deciduous tooth. So, if I simply leave it without anything, possibly, that first permanent molar will start to occupy the space of a premolar, and this will lead to secondary crowding. I can't let this happen because it can lead to an extraction case, without any need. We are going to use this loop band. In case number 1, it's an early loss of a molar tooth. Important characteristics of this loop band. This band must be well fitted because it will be used for a certain period of time. So, this band must have a certain self-retention. There must be retention of the band itself, independent of the cement. If you remove the loop band and it comes off very easily, it means it's poorly done because it should have its own mechanical retention. Also, we should not have any distance, really, between the extension of the band and the opposing tooth, the neighboring tooth, because that will maintain the space between the piece, which is the permanent piece, and the neighboring piece. If I observe that there is already a bilateral dental loss. It's not worth using a loop band because you will have two isolated structures. In that case, it would be worth using a lingual arch or a loop band for the upper arch. In the lower arch, I observe a lingual arch that can be used for certain situations, such as early bilateral loss or the loss of more than one tooth, where the Nance lingual arch can be applied. Alternatively, I can use it for cases of appliance where I know there is a difference between the size of the deciduous teeth and the size of the premolars, and in this mixed dentition exchange, I benefit from the Nance-free space. This Nance-free space is a space that comes from nature. The holy little God gave us this space, and if I have the appliance, I can use this space with my appliance as a space maintainer. Later on, I won't need to do stripping or interproximal reductions because I took advantage of this space difference. According to studies available in the literature, we find 0.9 millimeters on each side of the Nance-free space for the upper arch, and for the lower arch would be 1.7 millimeters on each side. In other words, I have almost 2 millimeters on each side. That means I have almost 4 millimeters for the lower arch and the possibility of utilizing the Nance-free space with a lingual arch. If you have mild or moderate crowding, it's worth using. The Nance lingual arch has a space maintainer too. Utilize the Nance-free space. Agreed. I can use the lingual arch in other situations, such as for anchorage. So sometimes I need to create anchorage for a tooth that is ectopic, for example, and I need to apply traction. For example, in the case of having an impacted canine, I can use the Nance lingual arch as an anchorage. For the molars and from the molar, place a cantilever or then place a hook on the lingual arch itself, on its structure, and use this appliance as anchorage. So, the space maintainer will mainly work for these situations. To maintain space in cases of early loss, to keep the space free for inheritance in cases of crowding, or to use as anchorage for mechanics where I need this anchorage, such as using it for traction or in cases of extractions, it will work excellently as anchorage. And our third and final appliance that we will mention as a very interesting appliance for you to start in the life of Intercept Orthodontics would be a space regainer. Imagine the possibility that you are watching this video only now and already have a patient who went through an early loss, but at that first moment, you didn't have the information or knowledge of something that could be. So the space is already lost. The molar has already moved mesially, and there is no longer space for the eruption of a premolar, for example, or a canine. In this case, we can work with appliance space regainers. These appliance space regainers have different designs, so I can work with one that has a spring in the arch itself. I can also work with regainers that have a lateral expansion screw, and I activate it every week with a quarter turn weekly. So there are different ways to activate. Here, for example, in this type of regainer, notice that I will use the two-pronged pliers to open this spring. So I am going to open this spring. Don't do it by hand, use the pliers. And after I put it back on the arch, it will continue exerting the force to distalize and regain the space of that tooth that tilted towards the initial position. And one of the mistakes people make when creating a space regainer is precisely using too few retention clasps. See here, I have the vestibular arch and I have the clasp, which is a small clasp. Here, I only have one retention clasp here, because the arch is very short. So, it might be that this patient has very little retention because I only have a vestibular arch and a shaped small clasp for retention. So there are cases where we can do this specific adjustment that I explained in this video the same way. There are resin adjustments to improve retention, or I can make adjustments to this vestibular arch to make it more corrective. Because since I am applying a force that is significant, I might have the effect of this appliance coming out of the patient's mouth. So, when you can add clasps, ball hooks, the more retention clasps on a space regaining appliance, the better. To stabilize this appliance in the patient's mouth. Is that okay? I hope you have enjoyed this video. All of this is detailed in our module number 3 of the Intercept course. I don't know if you know, I am the coordinator of the Intercept course, which is an online course in Intercept Orthodontics, where you go from knowledge from the study of diagnosis to each type of treatment protocol. So, from the photography, in corrective orthodontics, development of adhesion, treatment of pattern 2, pattern 3, open bite, all the treatment of impactions is included. In this program, which is the Intercept course and currently has more than 3,000 graduates throughout Latin America and Europe. So, if you want to receive information about the Intercept because you see a great opportunity in your life to study or deepen your knowledge in Intercept Orthodontics, I will leave the link to the waiting list below. So, put your name on the waiting list because as soon as we have news about the next group, we will contact you here in advance and with priority. If you liked this video, if you liked this explanation of these appliances, today we talked about removable expanders. We also saw space maintainers and space regainers. If you liked today's content, leave a like on this video, leave in the comments which appliance you have already used or need to know more about, as I will love to read all your comments, okay? Thank you very much for your attention in today's video. It was amazing to be with you, and I wish you an excellent afternoon, evening, or day. I don't know what time you're watching this video. See you next time. Bye.